Welcome to Kate's Cadence, and we're about to get started with learning Helm and what it's all about. And it looks like we got quite a few people in this session, so I'm glad that you guys have joined. So let me go and close this out and get started. So I'm following the instructions on my GitHub account here. So again, what Helm is, pretty much Helm is a package manager, Kubernetes, which is an open source container orchestration platform. And it's used to simplify the deployment and management of applications on Kubernetes clusters and allows users to define, install, and upgrade complex applications with ease. And essentially, it transforms the concept of applications into tangible, manageable entities. So, like how we're creating our application, we first create the deployment, then we go ahead and create the the service file, we create the ingress, and we create all those things. So Helm pretty much packages all those things into one thing, and it allows you to go ahead and deploy and remove everything at once. So say you have a quite complex application, you're not deleting a deployment, you're not deleting the service. You can pretty much manage it all at once, so it's a lot easier to manage, and you can like templatize your applications as well. So it's pretty fascinating. And again, following on our GitHub account here, which will be in the chat or in the link as well in the description, you can easily follow the instructions to go and do this on your own machine, which is what I recommend you do. So let's go ahead. If you haven't already, just go ahead and install Helm, and the instructions are quite clear there. And then we can go ahead and start creating our first Helm chart. So we can actually deploy our Python Flask app that we've been working on, the past few weeks. So if you haven't checked out those videos, definitely go ahead and look into it and follow along and catch back up here on this video. So I already installed Helm on my computer. So if I do Helm, you can see it. It looks good here. So we already have Helm installed. So there's this thing called charts, right? So Helm charts are essentially what is the bare bones and backbone of your applications, and it creates you have your files, so you have your deployment, so you have this something called values.yaml. So actually let me show you how we can actually do it. So let's go and start creating our first Helm chart. So first thing we want to do is let's get in the right a folder where we can like manage this. So you don't want it to necessarily be in the file that you actually cloned, the cadence stuff. So let's go ahead and just do a like cd dot dot to get back a level, and we're gonna be at least in my case, I'm in my cadence folder. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a directory. Well, actually, I don't have to. Helm is gonna create it for me. So let's do this. So we're gonna go ahead and do Helm create, and then you can name this whatever you want. But in my case, I just named it my Flask app, well, Flask app chart. So you can understand that this is indeed the chart. Excuse me, because it can get confusing in if you're first learning this. So let's go ahead and create our first chart. So now we created it, right? So it just says creating Flask app chart and it's blank. So if you do an ls, you can actually see that there's a folder now created called Flask app chart. So let's go ahead and change our directory into that. And if we go ahead and do that, we can just go ahead and ls. And now it created as far as a couple of things for us. So there's this thing called chart.yaml, and specifically we want to focus on chart.yaml as well as values.yaml. So let's take a look and a peek inside the chart.yaml and see what it looks like inside there. So see um, chart. Oh, I'm sorry, cat chart.yaml. What I'm doing. All right, cool. So pretty much tells us a few things here. So cat chart YAML, it tells us, so it's an API version v2. It says it's a Flask app chart, and it's a Helm chart for Kubernetes. And it actually gives you a description of what it is as well in here in the notes. So a chart can be either an application or a library chart. And application charts are a collection of templates that can then be packaged and versioned and like archived as well to be deployed. So in our case, this looks good. So actually what I want us to do on this file is let me go in VI and go to charts.yaml, and we're going to make one modification on this file here, and we're going to go down all the way to the bottom. And as far as app version, I'm just going to go ahead and comment this out. So I'm going to go ahead and just comment that out here, and then we'll save, and we can exit off of that. So next thing we can do is I'm gonna um, BI into the values.yaml file. And this is where you have your values, right? So you can modify the amount of replicas you want, the specific image you want for your application, the tag version, everything essentially on here. So you can change the service account that's going to be applied to your pods or your containers as well. Provide capabilities, set up your ingress. Quite a big, quite a good amount of things here. So we're going to modify this as far to our liking. So first thing that I'm going to do on this folder here is change the image. So I don't want to use an image here from Nginx, but I want to use my own image. So let's go ahead and navigate to my Docker Hub, and you guys should have a Docker Hub account. If you haven't, it's free, and it's just a repository where you can store your images. And this is where I'm going to go and gather my image. So I'm going to be using version 3 on this one. So all I need to go ahead and do is copy this. So let me copy that and go back here, and let's modify the repository to reflect that. So I'm going to go ahead and also change the image pull policy to always. That means that whenever this is being deployed, it's not going to look for the local cache, because sometimes you may have a older version of your app which is stored and cached, and it may assume that that's the latest version, and you will be pretty much just deploying an old version. So to avoid that, I just set up it to always for this purpose. And here we can go ahead and reference it to version 3 as far as that tag. And as we can see here, actually it's v3. So I think I need to change it to v3 on there, and that should be good. So we can just move on here and scroll down again. All the instructions are in the in my GitHub account here, so we're just going to follow along on this. So we've already changed the name of the repository, and also need to replace the tag, which we've already done as far as to use v3. And we now need to go down to where it says the service type. We need to change that to node port and port 5000. And remember, we created our service account or our service to reflect a node port and port 5000. So it's literally the same settings that we have, and we can double check that here. And if we go to the My Flask app service, we can see it's port 5000, and also on as far as the version or the type is node port. So we're just going to reflect and match that stuff there. So let me go back and let's make that change. So go down, and as we see here, it just says cluster IP. So this is very important. You want to make sure the N in node and also P in node port is they're both capital, or it's going to give you an error. So and just reflect the port 5000. And perfect. So now we're in the ingress. So we're going to go ahead and as far as create our ingress here. So to do that here, first off, we need to have the class name as far as to Nginx. And go here, if I do a the ingress class, we can see that we have it named Nginx here because we have our Nginx controller there. So we just want to make sure that's going to use this one. So let's go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to go ahead and backspace and make sure that's enabled. Then we're going to make a line here, and we want to copy this rewrite target. So let me copy this here and go back. All right, perfect. And this is just going to make sure everything is like redirected. If you don't really know what this is, we did talk about this in our previous, I believe, like 2 weeks ago. I believe it was 2 weeks ago. We were discussing ingresses in general. So this is just going to be a great way to take advantage of the redirection. So it points to our services without having to specify the port number. So moving over to the hosts. And again, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Or moving too fast, feel free to chime in. So I'm going to leave hosts blank, right? And then as far as paths, so paths, let's go back here and make sure what it says. So make sure host value is empty, and then update the path type to prefix. So go ahead and change that to prefix. Host, I'm gonna make it, yeah, I'll make it just like this. This is fine. Um, that is okay. All right, and this can be left blank. I don't need that. And I think this is good. So you can also set up your auto scaling, um, requirements and everything as well. But I'm confident about how that looks. So now we created a chart. We modified that chart and removed the version, the app version, and then we made a few changes in the values.yaml file. So we're almost done in creating our first chart here. So next thing that we need to do here is go into the templates and deployment and modify the deployment.yaml file. So if I go ahead and VI and I just go down to templates and go down to deployment.yaml, um, there's like a whole bunch of things here in like those curly brackets, right? And these are essentially like variables. So in the values.yaml file, it will reference these things here for you. So it's kind of a like if you like Terraform, it's like almost the same type of like format and setup really. So it's quite comparable. But what we're going to go ahead and go down to is right above resources. So let me just do an O. Let me modify that and do O. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this here, and we need to make this change because we need to go ahead and get the option to pull the pod name, which is going to be displayed in the web page that we have on our application. So that's why I want to make sure that we have that in here. So this. Okay. And that's how that should look. And it's also displayed here. So just make sure it looks like this. Um, yep. Don't worry about it if it's like one off. It's still okay. Oh yeah. So let me go ahead and save that. So that's saved. So now we created the deployment. And if you want to take a scan, you can also cat and look at the other templates that they have in there. They have like other things like HPA, the Ingress. Um, and you can make changes in here if you need to as well, but we're not going to go ahead and do that. It's not required for what we're doing, but it's very useful to check it out. So now that we've done that, now what we need to go ahead and do is let's copy this here and make some changes here. So I'm going to go ahead and cd back. So I need to cd out of that file here, and we can ls, and we can see that we have our Flask app chart here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let me copy that again. I don't think it copied. So, so we want to just have this. So Helm install name of your release. So I'm just going to name it like my Flask app release. So you can just see like, okay, this is the release because so you have to have your so there's a you're gonna we're installing our release, which is pretty much like a version of this Flask app chart. So the release, and you'll see once I create it, there's something called like revisions, and you can upgrade and you can change and you can revert or roll back to previous versions that you have. But every time you make a change on your actual release, it's gonna pretty much be its own revision. Even if you revision back to like version one, it's still going to increase. So you install it now, it's going to be version one. You make an upgrade, it's version two. You go back to version one, that's going to still be revision number three. If that makes sense. So hopefully I didn't lose you guys, but let's go ahead and install it. All right. I think I made a mistake here. Let me actually go back on and do something because it shouldn't look like this. But let me go back. So you can also let me do a recursive uninstall and named it. What did I name it? My Flask. My Flask app. RESE. Oh, it's, uninstall release not loaded. And then you can do a Helm ls. Okay, so there was no version, so it looks like it was deleted. So I need to go back and check something out here in, let me see, D here, s- s- ASCAP, PI values. Make sure everything looks as it's supposed to here. This looks good. Version 3. Oh, I know what I didn't do. This. This needs to be changed to true. Ingress needs to be changed to true, which means that it's going to actually take effect of the ingress, which is why I noticed that something looked off there. So now if I go back and I do a Helm install, my Flask app release, and then this is again, this is just, you can name your release anything you want, but the Flask app is pretty much pulling the contents from this folder here, which is going to be these those YAML files there. Oh, I'm in the same folder as I just said don't do. All right. All right, perfect. So now this looks how it like it should. So now you're probably looking at this like, why does this say this? It's only because I'm using localhost. And now if I do a git odds, we have our one pod of the My Flask app. It says My Flask app release, Flask app chart. So pretty much just appends the name of the release and the chart. But it's running as we see here. And for us to go and access that, we can also just do this like we've been doing before. But let's go ahead and go to localhost. And now as you see, we have now set up the pod. Our application is now pretty much completely been installed. We didn't have to modify any services, any ingress, or manually install any of the deployment information. It's literally pulling everything from your Flask, from your chart, and that's pretty much what a Helm chart is, at the bare bones of it. So hopefully, it wasn't too difficult or concerning for you all. Do you guys have any questions in the meantime, before I continue or move on? Come on, why y'all so quiet tonight, man? I feel like I'm doing a solo video right now. You guys can speak up, and if you're confused or something's not making sense, let me know, because I'm still learning this stuff as well too. So, you know, it's a safe space to have a discussion on it. You guys are a tough crowd tonight. Sheesh. It's all good. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much how you create your own Helm chart. So now let's move on to actually doing some things like let's upgrade it, right? So I have we're on version 3 as we see here, right? So let's actually change it to get to a different version. So um, let's go to version 4. I know I have a version 4 already on here in my Flask app repository, but let's go ahead and make it interesting. Let's actually start doing something called a and I spelled build wrong here, of course, a multi-build Docker image. And it looks like someone might have asked a question. I understand, but I have to watch the video. I did it wrong. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, just take your time with it. The video will be up soon, but let me know if you have any like immediate problems. I can go back and show you what my file looks like as well, if you need. But many of you may have not have done this before as far as creating like a multi-built Docker image. And essentially what that means is if we go on here in our Docker hub, there's options where you can like select different types of OS systems, right? And compatible systems. So right now, my Flash 3 is Linux ARM 64 and version 8. Let's go ahead and make it more available to, I guess, like other operating systems and other versions of like Linux operating systems, right? So what we can do to do that is something called a multi-build Docker image, where you can pretty much create a version for each different one, right? So in this case, we're going to be creating one for AMD 64, ARM 64, and another version of ARM, which is a version 7, as well. And to do that, let's go ahead and do this here. So first part you need to do is do a Docker build x create and then the name of your builder. And then you just dash dash use. You're just going to say, I'm going to use this. So if you already have Docker, this is already like incorporated in the Docker package and application. So pretty cool. So I'm not going to do this command because I already done it. And then you can also do a bootstrap and you can inspect it. So I'll do that version for you so you guys can just kind of see how it looks. Um, so back here, all right. All right, LS. So now I'm going to go ahead and CD into the Cadence folder, and then we're going to go into my Flask app version 4. So if you haven't already pulled that, definitely do that here. And a shout out to Idris. He's the one who educated me on the different like Docker build versions, which was pretty interesting when I found out. So thank you. I don't think he's in here, but yeah, I just want to let him know he helped me greatly with that. So once we have that, right, we now need to go ahead and start building and pushing our image. So the great thing about the Docker build X command, you can not only build your image, but you can actually push it directly to your Docker your Docker account as well. So we're gonna do that now. Let me go ahead and paste that here. And of course, you just need to change this portion here to your actual name of your profile. So mine is pvas24. And then the application is my Flask app, and then it's going to be named version 4. And we've already mentioned as far as the platforms, which is going to be the different versions. So let's go and do that. This may go through really quickly because I've already have a cache because I did it earlier, but yours may take a little bit longer. It may take like 3 to 5 minutes maybe.
Question, PJ. How does it know that it will run on those platforms? Does it do like a check on it, or?
Yeah, it does a check and it makes sure that it meets all the requirements for each one. So it's running the build concurrently. So any dependencies and all that stuff that it's doing and it's not working or it doesn't work, you'll get an alert and it's just going to automatically like cancel the build and it'll tell you what the error is. So certain things are not compatible and it may not work for every type. But at least the more options you have, just the more available and more useful it will be for the community that is, using your image. So, but great question. Yeah, it definitely does a thorough check and make sure that it's actually gonna work.
Cool.
But excellent question. So simple as that, that actually installed it, right? So now what I'm going to do here is let me go to my Docker hub account here and you can see that it should have updated my version 4 a few seconds ago, right? So it hasn't even done the vulnerability scan because I just pushed it through and it just pushed over. So now that we have a newer version, let's go ahead and utilize this version on the as far as within our Helm application, right? So with we're gonna go ahead and make a new release. So let's just go back here and just see it says version 3 and we're running on there, right? So I'm going to make a couple of changes. So to do this, very easy. Let's go ahead and CD back to where our Helm information is, right? So I'm going to ls. So let's CD to Flask app chart ls. And I'm just going to go ahead and modify that values file here. And first thing I want to do is I want to increase the replica count to 2. I want to make it, to where it's going to 2 different pods, right? And we're going to use the same repository. However, I'm going to change my tag to v4 now. And I'm going to go and scroll down. And I think that's it. We don't have to really change anything else. We're just going to change the version and the amount of pods that we're going to be running, right? So everything else should be fine. And let's go ahead and I'm going to save that. And to go ahead and upgrade your application, you want to go ahead and just do this. Let's go back to our handy dandy instructions here. So let's go ahead. So we're going to do a Helm upgrade, the release name, and then it's going to be .flask app chart, right? So I'm going to go and CD and back. So we're out of the actual folder. And let me go ahead and do this. So let me back that out here, remove that, and then the release name. So our release name was, I forgot what it was, but it's okay. I can just scroll up here and it should show me. So I believe it was okay, my Flask at release. And you can always do Helm ls and it will list all your current releases as well, so you don't have to do what I just did. So we're doing a simple thing, Helm upgrade. We're going to use the same release. So that release is the one that we just created that's currently running. And then we're going to go ahead and reference the Flask app chart, which has all the manifest files in there with the modifications, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click that here, and boom. So it says here our release Flask app release has been upgraded, and it says how happy helming. So let's go ahead and do Helm ls. And as we see here, we have the name, which is the My Flask app release. It's in the default namespace, and the chart revision number is number 2, because remember we've upgraded and we changed it. You modified it, right? So now it's telling us that this is a new version, and it's pretty much on its own, right? So it's totally different from the version 1 that we had before, which was running on version 3 as far as our application. So now let's go ahead and see what it did. So, and it actually tells us the time that it was modified as well. So good timestamp there too. So now let's go back and just do localhost again, and let's see what happens. So now our localhost is updated. The version is now reflective as well, which is gonna show version 4. And we now also have, as far as let's see if we have multiple apps. So let me do a K get pods. And now what do we have? We have two apps. We have two versions of our two, a replica of these two, right? If we do K get deploy, you can see there's the deployment that has 2 out of 2. So that looks good, right? So we actually successfully done it. And if we do this, it's going to load balance automatically. So if I go ahead and refresh, it should show us those two, ends in WQ, and that should be one of them here, ends in WQ, right? So we have both of them load balancing, off one of another. So that's pretty awesome, and pretty much just showing what we did before, right? So I hope that's like fascinating or cool to you all. But you guys pretty much created your first Helm chart with an actual custom application. And I'll also show you that there's other Helm applications in other Helm charts that you can gather and get. And it's pretty much just like a app store where you can install things like Argo CD, which we're going to actually do in a moment, as well as other Nginx or any other applications that already are maintained by the by the company that creates it. So it's a nice way that you can get some dependable out of the box, something that you can quickly deploy right on your Kubernetes cluster, without much maintenance in general. So it's pretty awesome. So any questions or anything like that? Any comments? Does it seem interesting, or is this boring as hell, or Helm is just not for you? Or yeah, tell me what your thoughts are. Anyone?
Real interesting stuff, man.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And
Good
again, I
stuff.
know, yeah, this is kind of daunting at some points, but for us to go ahead and take the small baby steps, it's better, I guess, this way, so we can kind of get our hands dirty. And I enjoy learning this stuff, so I can educate you all, and bounce ideas off as well. So yeah, this is pretty much how we done this. So the next thing that I want to do today is actually set up Argo CD. And if you all, I know like probably kept hearing me saying Argo CD. What the hell is that? As well as what is a GitOps? So that may be a new term for some of you all, but it's a pretty awesome thing. I guess before I go talk about GitOps and Argo CD, I guess let's roll back actually. Let's roll back to the previous version. So before I even talk about the GitOps stuff, and then we can just naturally move on here. So now you remember what our release name was, right? So I can just Helm roll back, and then roll back is just pretty much just rolling it back to a previous version. So right. So let me go ahead and roll back to this version here. So my Flask app release. I believe that's what it's called, right? And then the release number. So I want to go back to, remember we have two versions right now. So we're currently on version 2. So I want to go to version 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just do Helm rollback my Flask app release 1. And then the rollback was done. So now if this is working correctly, it should go back to version 3 and also only show us one. Um, it should only have one pod reflecting there. And there you have it. If I refresh, it shouldn't refresh to another pod, because it should only have one running, as we see here. So that's pretty much how easy it is to roll back your application to a different version. So beautiful, beautiful there. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's roll it back to release 2. Oh, in fact, if we do Helm LS, you can also see that it should say Helm. It should say version 3 now, because this is the third version. So Helm LS, and as you see here, revision number 3. So it's technically going back to version 1, but because it's just incrementing every single time, it's technically version 3. This is the third thing that we've done with that actual Helm release. So that makes sense. I hope it does. Um, so that's that, and that's the way that you can, quickly, upgrade, install your own version of this application, as well as make your, revisions and rolling back if you need to, in case there was any emergency, something went wrong. So that's that portion. And then now, given the introduction to GitOps and Argo CD, and I'll just go ahead and pretty much read it here. So I thought this was a really good explanation, which is GitOps is a modern approach to managing infrastructure and application deployments, emphasizing the use of version-controlled Git repositories as a single source of truth for defining and maintaining the desired state of your systems. And in GitOps, configurations are declared in code, usually YAML or JSON, which we've been working on, and then it's stored in Git repositories like we have here, right? So we have our deployments, we have our config maps. I even have one here, and we have our service.yaml files, right? And what happens is it automatically is applied to our target environment, which is going to be the cluster of our choice, such as Kubernetes clusters. And we're going to do that via tools like Argo CD, which we'll get to. And what this does is it approaches and promotes automation, so consistency and collaboration amongst teams. And as changes are made through code updates, ensuring infrastructure and applications are always in that desired state. And GitOps also provides observability and rollback capabilities, making it a robust methodology for maintaining and scaling complex systems while ensuring reliability and reproducibility. And again, Argo CD is an open source GitOps based continuous delivery tool designed for Kubernetes environment, and it automates the deployment and management of applications on Kubernetes clusters. So think of GitOps as you have a GitHub repo, and you're putting all your YAML files in it, and Argo CD is continuously looking at that repository. And if it noticed that there's a YAML file, or you updated a deployment in there, you revised the version number of an image, or you changed the amount of pods that you want to have, or replicas you want to have, all that stuff is going to be continuously monitored. And once it sees that change, it's going to do whatever it can to make sure that its state of the cluster matches the state of that actual GitHub account. So that's what the Git ops is, pretty much from the nameplate that they're doing. So hopefully that explains that. And we're going to actually install Argo CD, show you how easy it is to install it, and also deploy our application and have it monitor our Flask at v4 repo, and yeah, get those services and things deployed this way as well. So that'll wrap everything up after this. So I think it'll be pretty exciting to see the full end-to-end process from how we did it locally on our cluster, and to theory doing it on a bigger scale as far as in Kubernetes. So yeah, so hope you guys enjoy it, and let's go ahead and get to it. I'll make sure there's no questions. I don't think so, but make sure. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and continue on. So to install Argo CD is quite easy. It's kind of scary how easy it is, man. So all you're gonna literally do is click on Helm repo, add Argo, and pretty much Helm repo. It pretty much is looking in the repository that Helm pretty much manages, and yeah, it's gonna pretty much pull it for you, and it's gonna install it and everything. So let's do it. So let me go on my cluster. Let me go on my command line here. If it loads up, where is it? Okay. So let me go ahead and clear that. So remember, very simple process. So we're going to do Helm repo add Argo, the actual site where that chart is, and we're pretty much adding the chart. So Helm repo add is adding that external chart, and we're naming that chart Argo, and this is actually the location of that chart. So hopefully that makes sense for you all. And yeah, so now Helm has been added to our repository. So if I do a Helm, I believe repo ls should show us. So we have this one external chart here. And yeah, that looks good. So now we have Argo. So we need to just reference Argo when we want to actually create our Helm, our Argo CD here. So now we did the list report, and let's go ahead and do this here. Oh, this didn't go well. I need to modify that, but no worries, we're good. Someone said something. Which version of Helm do I have installed? Excellent question. Let's see. What does it say here? What version do we have installed? Is it what Helm? I don't know if it's Helm minus V or is it V? No, one version. Okay, sure. Is it like short or something? I don't know. But looks like we're version 3.12.3. Yeah, hopefully that doesn't cause any problems. Um, but let's go ahead and install this here. So I don't know what happened with my code and why it's showing very weird. But let's go ahead and do it. So yeah, I need to fix that. It should look better in my repo. So let me cd here as act readme. Maybe it looks better there. Oh no, it doesn't. It looks the same. Looks crappy. But we're just gonna do it one by one. I'll update this in the GitHub, so don't worry. Actually, I can update it now. Let's go out here. Oh man, she's a lot. I know I could have probably just searched it here. All right, so okay, and save that. Let me do it. Git add. Git commit. We're gonna say helm add add command. Helm install. All right, and then I'm just gonna push it. So if I refresh the page, it'll probably look better now. There we go. Okay, so this looks better. All right, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing Helm. We're going to be installing Argo CD, and we're going to be using this here. The namespace is going to be Argo CD, and we're pretty much going to be using an insecure version of it, so it doesn't have to worry about any like TLS certificates, which can be a pain in the butt, and set server ingress enabled equals false as well. So we're going to be using port forwarding for this purpose here, but it's all good. Just someone saying something here. Sometimes it's better to use the value.yaml file from the Helm repo. Mm. Well, yeah, that's what we're doing. We created a custom application, so that one is not going to be in Helm. It's not going to be in the Helm repo. But yeah, of course, you definitely want to use what the company pretty much that's maintaining it. Absolutely, you want to go ahead and go through them for sure. As far as that's a good point. So
Yeah, PJ. Excuse me. I was saying that because right now
mhm.
you try to install with the imperative mode, right? Using Helm install, but it's better to update like the configuration that you want to do right now. It's better to do that with the value inside the value that YAML and then apply it like you do with your definition file in Kubernetes.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Definitely want to follow best practices. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention. So really appreciate it. See, I'm still learning this as well. So thank you for clarifying that here. But beautiful. So what we're gonna go ahead and do now is do the installation now of Helm. I mean, I'll keep saying Helm, but of Argo CD. Um, So sweet. So now we have this, right? So now if I do a kget, let's do kget namespace, right? It created the namespace for us. It's named Argo CD, and it also created a couple of other things as well for us too. If I do kget all minus namespace Argo, you can see that it created the Argo CD server, the repo server, something like a Redis like database, as well as this is a replica set, but it's pretty much created all these things for us there, right? And the application set controller. So yeah, and created the application stateful set here. So now, with that being said, let me go ahead and do this. We need to get the actual password for our Argo CD file, for our Argo CD login, right? And to do that, we just need to run this command. So let me get the password here. That, and then the password is going to be before the percentage sign. So just make sure you don't copy the percent sign because it's going to be an incorrect password. So just remember that. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go and create a port forwarding on here. We can do like a service or something like that, but right now, just for time purposes, I'm just going to do this. Oh, perfect. And we got a reference there. Appreciate you. So let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do a port forwarding. I'm also going to do this one thing as well, which is the and sign. And the and sign is going to make this go in the background. We're still going to get the verbose information that saying that, when you have a server up and someone's connected and it's pretty much port forwarding turned on. If I do it without it, um, it's totally like we can't really use this anymore, right? Because it's in the foreground, but we can just like put it to the background and stuff like that. But you'll see what I mean here. But it'll still show, but I think we can still like use our actual command line. So I can like ls and stuff still, right? But it'll still be appearing on here. So let's go and access this. So to do that, we need to go ahead and go in our browser. And instead of that, let's go ahead and do localhost again. And then this is going to be, I believe, on port 8080. And boom, we have Argo CD. And Argo CD's login. So the username is going to be admin. And then a temporary password. We just need to put that in there as far as what we used, what we gathered from there. And we should be signed in. I have this here. I'm going to delete this. I guess it cached the information from before, or I just didn't delete it, probably. Let's see. Someone said something else. I didn't know you can run the background with and. I've been opening new windows on each instance. Ha! Yeah,
Yeah, see my face. I learned something new tonight. Thank you.
Hey, no worries, man. No worries. I'm glad I can help you out with that. So yeah, that's a nice way to do it. You can even do it to where you can move the actual instead of it being on the terminal, you can pretty much redirect to something like null or something, so you don't even see that at all, and you can still run your application, and you don't even have to worry about seeing this stuff. Because like right now, if I go back to it, it's still going to give me that handling connection, but I can still do
Right.
whatever I want still, which is cool. But yeah, so look, we have the Argo CD app. So now what we need to do is a few things, right? Let's go ahead and create a new app. You see, it's even saying that Argo CD is saying like our repos are apps, and that's the whole mindset behind it. You want it to be, it's an application. So I can name this my Flask app or something, right? And then I'm going to select the project name. So I'm just going to put in the default here. And right now we're going to keep it at manual for now. And we can do auto create namespace, but I'm going to create everything in a default namespace. So don't have to worry about that really. And then now we need to get the repository URL. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my repo URL here. Well, it's just really up to here. And then I'll just copy this separately. So let's go back and let's update the path to Flask app before, and the repo URL is going to be here. So it's github.com, my GitHub username, and then the repository, and then the actual path of the v4 that we're looking to use. So it says head is okay, but technically it's supposed to be main, but I don't think it matters if you change it from either or. And then the destination needs to go to our actual cluster, and then a namespace. So default. So if you actually wanted to create a new namespace automatically, it'll also create a new namespace. But we're not going to do that in this case. I want everything to be in the default namespace here. for our video. And was there anything else I need to do? I think that's it. So let's go and create it. All right, awesome. So now it's created, but we have a status of missing and out of sync. So that means that it's not actually synced up with our repo, and it didn't scan it. But one cool thing we can do here is this. So let's go ahead and synchronize this, and you can do this automatically where you can, instead of it being manual, you can do it auto. But as we see here, we have the repository. We see where it's actually looking at. So it's looking for that main branch. And is looking at that path, Flask app v4. So anything I put in this folder here is going to look for and is going to make any changes that it needs to reflect that, right? So let's go ahead and see exactly what it's done. Okay. So it actually gives a nice visual view on this too, right? So we have the actual application overall, which is called my Flask app. Then it breaks it down into the config map, which is CM here. So I have a config map named env values. In that default namespace, I have our my Flask app service, as well as we have the my Flask app deployment, and we have our endpoints as well as our deployment replica set here. And at the end of it, we have our Flask app, right? Pod is the smallest deployable unit in Kubernetes. So pretty much that should be like the smallest thing that we see here. So that looks good. So there's one thing that's saying out of sync, which is that service, which it's probably going to give me some errors or something like that and clashing, but we'll see. But nonetheless, we can do this here. So 1 second. All right. Let's take a gander here. So application is created. Let me do an ls and actually do a k get odds. Now we can see that this is actually just showing from our Helm chart that we created. Our Helm like reference. And then we have our actual application that's been deployed via Argo CD. And if you do k get like deployments, we can see the deployments that we reference in the visual as well. It shows 2 out of 2. And also looking at the service, I can do k get service and slash endpoints. We can do that here. So we have our endpoints. They're both attached, so that looks good. And the service here under node port. So that looks good. So pretty much is doing essentially like the same like deployment way, but Argo CD gives us that one additional step where everything is reflected. So if it's not in the repo that we're pointing to, it is not going to, make the change. So even if I make like create a new pod or something in here and it notices that once it syncs up, it's going to immediately delete any resources that are not, abiding and conforming to that repo. So that's the whole mindset of the GitOps, and that's a nice way that you can have version control. So you can have just any lingering applications or services that are just out there, consuming resources, costing you money, and even potential vulnerabilities from a image or a pod that's pretty much, has some vulnerabilities on it that you don't want. So it kind of keeps everything in order and easy to manage and maintain no matter how big you grow. And yeah, so we're always in a think big mindset. So now let me do a get. We do a get ingress. So we have our my Flask at release, and I want to actually go in here and edit this ingress. I want to see if this actually works. I don't know if this is going to work, but I want to see how we can access the new application, right? So let's go ahead and I'm going to modify it from here. So okay, let me do a BI. Ooh, I won't be able to do it. I'm gonna have to do it through. Yeah, okay. I think I'm gonna have to do it through CE. All right, so let me see to the Flask app chart. That's what's posting it. So if I go in via values, maybe. I don't think there is a okay host. annotations, Nginx. All right. They're gonna be a little bit more difficult. I don't know if I'm going to get this working, but what I'm thinking is what we would have to do is go into templates, and we're going to have to modify the ingress.yaml file and specify the let me see here, the other path, right? So path type, then the service. So it'll be something like right down here. But I'm probably gonna break it. So yeah, I'm not gonna necessarily do that right now, but maybe that's something that we can go and work on like next week. But holistically, did that make sense as far as what we're doing and why we're doing it, and just showing you guys the different ways that we can deploy these applications from there. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. Let me see if I can just modify the Ingress and see if it will let me get away with it. I don't have it on sync automatically, so I think I might be okay. Yes. Okay, beautiful. Love to see it. Love to see it. So let's go ahead and modify this a little bit. So let's VI the Ingress a edit Ingress. All right, and let's make a couple of changes here. So I'm going to go ahead and create another path. I'm just going to Control Shift V, and I'm just going to press Y to yank, and I'm just going to press P to paste it. And then I'm just going to follow what the service name is. So now we have that, right? And I don't remember the name of my service, but I'll find it here. So we do get service. And then I'm just going to name app service, my Flask app service. All right, and then the port, same port, but instead this path, I'm going to name this one. Let's name it Argo. But this is the one that was created via Argo, and see if this works. I don't know again if this is going to work or not, but it's only one way to find these things out, right? And that's to try and experiment. So let's see what we get. So of course, we have right now version 3 running here. So let me go ahead and try to do / Argo and see if this works. Probably. Oh, it does. Okay, cool. But because I don't have it updated there, it's now pointing to that service that we created on the / Argo. But if I just go to localhost, it's just going to go to the original version 3, which again is associated with the Helm chart. And if we go back and we do a kgit service, kgit pods, we can see the different pods. So this pod here is going to be the if we just go ahead and go to localhost, so that's FD4S7, so ends in S7, and as we see here, it matches. But if as soon as I go to / Argo, it should go to the other two pods, which is going to end in FN, FH5, HX, and VF. So HX and VF should come up next. VF, perfect. There you go. That's how that works. So
This could kind of help simulate like a not feature flag, but maybe like a blue green kind of deployment, right?
yeah, and we're gonna move on to that too. That maybe like next week I may do that. But there's this really cool application that we can go ahead and explore and install, and it actually will show you how blue green actually works in real time, and it pretty much gives you like a visualization of how it will look, doing a rollout, as far as a rolling upgrade. So it's a pretty awesome thing, and that's pretty much what I'm going to progress to like next week, and then I guess kind of dive into actual specific CKA questions, and we can go ahead and do like practice questions like I typically like to do. We did one last week and that was pretty fun, but this is pretty much more of a real life type of scenario where I'm trying to figure out all the type of ways that we can experiment, learn something valuable that you can probably do on your day-to-day duties as a platform engineer, or even like a just like a DevOps engineer or that nature. So yeah, so I hope this is valuable to you all. It took me a little while to actually like do this stuff and get used to it and get my mind around it. So whenever I am able to learn something, I want to go ahead and let you all learn with me. So yeah, that kind of wraps up what I have for today. So before I get stopped to view the recording, any questions, or you want to wait to you can ask questions after the video as well if you want, if you prefer. I can stop recording. All right. So with that said, let me just go do my outro. Again, thank you all who are here in the live class here, as well as those who are watching the recording. We do this every Wednesday nights, between 8 p.m. Try to do like between an hour and a half. Sometimes we have so much fun it's longer. But we are here to learn the CKA and just understanding the concepts of containerization and Kubernetes. So, for those who are focusing on getting the CKA in real life experience, this is a perfect example how you can apply these things right from your local cluster without having to pay anything and still getting, some production like environment. So this is why I love to do it. And if you didn't already like and please subscribe, just lets me know that we're doing well and give us some better ideas as far as what we should do next. But all in all, thank you again, and we'll hope to see you next week. So peace. This is Payload Pat.
Appreciate it, man. Solid job. Thank you.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to stop the recording.